recording? All right, we are good to go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of Postdoc Appreciation Week. Today, we are lucky to have a panel of wellness experts that are going to share their expertise with us. So this is day 3 of Postdoc Appreciation Week, and we just want to highlight the rest of the events that are going on this week. So on Thursday, tomorrow, we have a networking and industry career panel, and on Friday, we have a social. So if you're interested in registering for these events, you still can, and we look forward to seeing you for the rest of the week. So before we get started today, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we are on today, the land that UHN operates on. There has been a UHN hospital on this land since 1829, and long before that, Indigenous peoples were its stewards. They, as their descendants, and we at UHN do now, learned shared knowledge and healed each other. Regardless of where we sit today, we owe much to the peoples that have called this land home. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and to work here. We remember and honor the legacy of the peoples who have been here before us and all who work to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real. So I would like you just to take a moment to join me in reflecting on the land that you're on. And if you would like some more information, you can scan the QR code here. Okay, so welcome to day 3. As I said, this week is all about thanking and honoring and celebrating postdocs. And there is a thank you message from Dr. Brad Reuters that we actually presented on Monday, the first day of our week of celebration. If you would like to see this thank you, you can access it on YouTube. And in this video, he expresses his thank you and his gratitude and appreciation to all postdocs at UHN. The ORT, the Office of Research Trainee, which is where I'm from, would also like to thank all UHN postdocs. So for those of you who have registered with us for the $5 virtual credit, we just want to let you know that you should have received an email about it. So make sure you watch for that and that you redeem your credit before 5 p.m. on Friday. And the other thing, there's 2 other things we want to let you know about. So the UHNPA, so the Postdoc Association, is developing a buddy program, so a postdoc to postdoc buddy program. So if you're interested in connecting with other postdocs, either sharing or your expertise or learning from others, we have this program coming up. So if you're interested in learning more, or you want to sign up to participate, watch out for future emails, or you can scan this QR code here. And the final thing that we want to share with you is that the UHN Postdoc Association is now recruiting members for the 2022-2023 Leadership Committee. So if you are interested in joining the team, we have a range of subcommittees that run opportunities for postdocs in areas of mentorship, professional development, social networking, health and wellness. So if you're interested in these opportunities, stay tuned for more information. And I think their last slide here is a way to actually find out some information now. So if you're interested and you want to be part of the committee, feel free to sign up here on the form. You can follow the QR code and also keep an eye out for future communication. So that is the intro, some information for you. And what I will do now, I'll stop sharing and I will pass it off to James and Suzanne. They're going to take over our wellness panel for today.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you to the whole UHN Postdoc Association for putting on all the events this week, and to the ORT for their support in getting these events together. This is a really timely panel, I think, at this point when we are still in an ongoing pandemic and probably just about nobody has come through unscathed without some effect on their mental health. So we're going to talk about the intersection of mental and physical wellness. We have a great set of speakers who I also most of all want to thank. I'm privileged to know each of them, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their expertise and their experience on the subject. So I would like to get out of the way and just get right to it with our first speaker, Dr. Madeline Gears.
I should probably unmute myself after all the Zoom stuff that we've had for the past couple of years. It's amazing how often I forget to unmute myself. So hi, everyone. As James said, I'm Dr. Madeline Gears. I am one of you guys. I am a postdoctoral fellow here out at UBC. I'm part of the Population Physical Activity Lab. I'm also a clinician in Vancouver. I work in the area of behavioral medicine. And I'm going to start things off today by talking about exercise and depression. The spirit of this talk, as we were working with James, is very much focused on applied stuff. It's not really focused on sort of like an in-depth research talk like we'd expect from a conference. So I'm going to keep things pretty broad and pretty general and focus on like how it applies to us as postdocs. If you have any questions about the research base, the literature, designs, methodologies, I'm more than happy to answer that. Send a question in the chat. My Twitter information is also on my last slide, so feel free to send me a note or an email, and I'm happy to answer and get into geeky conversations. In being from BC, I'm joining you not from Toronto, but from the traditional territories of the Musqueam people, whose land I have the privilege of working, playing, and living on. So we're going to focus on three main areas as part of my talk today. We're going to start with a values check. This is a bit of a weird place to start, maybe, seeing that you might be expecting, heading straight into exercise land. But values are really important for a number of reasons, and it's not something we often get a chance to talk about or reflect on, especially, when we're swamped with studies and pubs and grants and having to wrangle the undergraduate students and volunteers. So we're just going to take a moment to pause and think about those. We'll do a quick overview of what the evidence says in terms of that connection between exercise, health, and mental health. Quickly do a little blurb about my lab and my research program, and then shifting it over to you and what can you do, how can you implement this in your very busy lives. So values. Values are something that people in the areas of psychology, wellness, philosophy, just humanity have been aware of for a long time, but they've recently risen to prominence through acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. And under this ACT umbrella, values are really thought of these things that give purpose and meaning to our lives. They're the things in our own lives that are more important than money and provide us with that motivation to get up and do things each day and direct our actions down a certain path. According to ACT, we achieve wellness in part by acting in a values consistent way. So if we have a value of being truthful, and then we go and we blatantly lie to someone, that's not going to sit well with us because our actions are value inconsistent. So values, when I've worked with patients in the past, really come into two main thematic areas. One is that we have values about things. And for some people, that thing is money, which is fine. That's your personal value. But most of the time, what we hear people say are things like family, friends, relationships, environment, having hobbies that I really love, are really important personal values for a lot of people. They're ones that often pop up. Other times, people describe qualities, so these characteristics of their life that inspire them to do certain things and that they want to experience in their day-to-day actions. You pick up a dictionary and find an adjective, and chances are it could be a value for someone. Ones that we often hear, again, working with patients, are things like, I want to live an authentic life. I want to have excitement in my life. I want curiosity. I want kindness. I want the sense of belonging. And I can find these in various places within my world, whether it's through a really good lab community, relationships with family and friends, engaging in hobbies that I really enjoy. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to you for a second. If you've done this exercise before, that's great. It's always good to update, but if you've never done this before, it could potentially be a little bit challenging, but grab a pen, grab a piece of paper. If you don't have any of these analog writing instruments around you, grab your phone, grab your notebook, grab whatever it is around you to write something, and take a moment to write down some of those values that are really salient to yourself, things that are important to you, whether or not they fall into more of that nouns category, person, place, or things, or they fall more into that adjective category, qualities in your life that are really important. And after you've jotted them down, rate how important each one is to you on that 1 to 10 scale. 10 meaning that it's really important, it's really central to your life, your motivation, who you are as a person. 1 means that it's not really important to you at all. I'll give you guys about a minute to do this. So if you're comfortable sharing, you're more than welcome just to put a couple of your values in the chat. It's sometimes nice to see what other people value. It's nice to share what's really important to us. It's kind of a point of pride, you know, having these important, wonderful things in our lives. If you aren't comfortable, no problem. What I'd like you to do is hold on to that piece of paper because we're going to come back to it in a little bit. Okay, so shifting over to exercise and depression. I know that, you know, the vast majority of people here have a background in life sciences, medicine, health sciences in some capacity. So probably no surprise to anyone here that physical activity is good for our health. It's pretty amazing. A couple of years ago, we updated the Canadian physical activity guidelines. Before, they used to be really just focused on physical activity. But as the result of a couple of really innovative literature reviews that were coming out, we started to really appreciate that it's not just physical activity, but it's physical activity in complement to a bunch of other health behaviors that are really important to influencing health and well-being. So as a result, the guidelines were expanded to move from just physical activity to what we call the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines. So under current Canadian recommendations, we should be engaging in about 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. Moderate activity is kind of like you're rushing to the bus. You're not so late that you're having to get into a sprint, but you're definitely, you know, briskly walking. You might be feeling a little bit warmer, starting to sweat, definitely not able to sing if you're trying to talk out. And also recommended that we do muscle strengthening activities in the major muscle groups at least twice per week. Very new to the guidelines is that we've added on sleep. So the recommendation to get 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep on a regular basis, and sedentary behavior, which is limiting our time spent sitting, reclining, or lying down to 8 hours or less per day, of which no more than 3 hours should be leisure screen time. And as much as possible, standing up, breaking up our long periods of sitting. Now, when the guidelines were coming out, I tried to follow these quite closely just to see, you know, how feasible they are. And I will say, as someone whose job is to sit behind a computer and crunch data, it's extremely challenging to get this, especially the sedentary behavior part of it. So the guidelines have done a nice job recognizing this, and the general standpoint is that some is better than none. Within moderation, more is better than less. If you can't reach all three, maybe try for two, maybe try for one. Maybe it's a week by week thing. They really encourage, working towards it, but not expecting perfection. The Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines are based on several decades of really nice research, but primarily focused on chronic health outcomes, particularly cardiovascular health outcomes. And that 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity a week is this really nice inflection point on cardiovascular risk graphs, where if you are exercising more than about 150 minutes per week, your chance of experiencing a cardiovascular event significantly decreases, including cardiovascular mortality. Otherwise, though, physical activity, as you might expect, associated with a lot of other really positive health outcomes, reduced risk for cancer, improved functioning, reduced pain in some people. It's quite a powerful treatment option. Now, more recently, we have started to investigate connections between exercise and mental health outcomes. This is the result of the 2016 CANMAT guidelines, and CANMAT is the national psychiatric organization that focuses on mood disorders and anxiety disorders. And these are their official recommendations for using exercise as a treatment for depression, which is really cool. It's not just to manage depression, but it's actually being used to treat depression. So what they recommend is undertaking exercise, either cardiovascular or resistance training, really whatever you prefer, 3 times per week, at least 30 minutes per note at a moderate intensity, with the big caution being, you have to adjust this to your fitness level. If you are extremely fit and you go to the gym regularly, there might not be a lot of room for upward movement. If you're someone who hasn't been to the gym for a while, we're going to want to start smaller than that. Probably, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on your physical health. This is the dose that is recommended for people with mild to moderate depression, and it's about as effective as medication or therapy. Now, what our lab is doing with this information is a lot of knowledge translation activities. We're focusing on developing interventions for the community, training providers through CSEP, which is one of the national exercise organizations, and also working with healthcare providers on how to communicate this to their patients. So if you have any questions about our work, I'd love to talk about it. It's always fun to geek out about research. More importantly, what can you guys do about this? It's pretty common knowledge that exercise is good. We have this emerging body of evidence saying that exercise is really good for mood. What can we do? Well, the easy answer is exercise. The disclaimer is check with your doctor if you have any concerns, if you haven't exercised for a while, or if you haven't seen your doctor for a while. We always want to make sure this is done safely. But assuming that that's been done, assuming that your physical health is okay, what can we do? Exercise. And unfortunately, and James will know this, this is the focus of our grad work, is that exercise initiation is really easy. If we try, we can all get to the gym for once or twice. We can all go for the sporadic walk in the evening. Maintaining exercise, really sticking with an exercise, is the challenging part. How do we maintain exercise over days, weeks, months, and years so that we can reap these continued health benefits? If you have the answer to this, you will probably win a Nobel Prize because it's extremely difficult. One of the models that are helping to explain exercise initiation is the COM-B model. It's by West and Michi. They're 2 great researchers out of the UK. COM-B stands for capacity, opportunity, and motivation. And its more complicated form, it looks like this. If we want to really reduce this and whittle it down to an even simpler form, what it essentially says is that behavior is the product of why and how. Why is motivation. We have to have a reason to do an activity, and how do we implement it in our day-to-day lives. And Q, this is where we're going to come back to our values. Values are things that are more important than money, and values give us the motivation, that sort of little bit of mental energy to go and do things. So thinking about exercise and thinking about those values that you wrote down, I'd like you to ask yourself, does exercise align with your values in some way? probably most obviously, it might align with the value of health or fitness if that's one of the ones that you jotted down. But if you think, you'd like to exercise and you just aren't certain how it fits into your life or how it fits into values, what I'd encourage you to do is think creatively. It's not necessarily a black and white thing. Could exercise be something that you do to foster positive relationships? So something that you could do with perhaps your partner, if you have kids, something that you could do with your kids so that your family can have time together, or something where you can go and make friends or hang out with friends in the community in different ways. Is it a way to challenge yourself in maybe a new and novel way that you haven't tried before, or to set that goal that's going to push you a little bit further? Could exercise be something that you can do as an authentic experience? So a way for you to express yourself, whether that's through sport or dance or whatever it is, hiking, camping, whatever it is. Or could perhaps exercise be something that you can link to these values of fun or excitement? The reason why I ask this is because, we're here about wellness, and, we don't want to exercise just because the guidelines tell us to. We want to exercise because it actually brings value to our lives. And this is the non-scientifically endorsed personal opinion part of the talk. If you really don't like exercise and you've tried lots of different types and it's just not something that's important to you, life's too short to do something that you hate. But if it's something that can complement and add value to your life, then it's something that's going to be intrinsically motivating and something we're going to be more likely to do. The how part, as I said, is the really tricky part. On the left, you'll see a list of different strategies. These often pop up in the literature, and we can kind of think of them as falling into three categories. The first category really has to do with self-regulation and being prepared for exercise. So if we can schedule, if we can develop action plans, if we can log our exercise and we're prepared for exercise, we're more likely to go and exercise in whichever form it is, whether it's rollerblading or going to a bowling league or heading to the gym on campus. The second strategy in general is to be flexible, because I'm sure you guys have busy lives, again, grants, wrangling the undergrads, putting in publications, managing family life. We never get paid enough, so we're having to make ends meet. If we're approaching exercise or any health behavior in a really rigid black and white, expecting perfectionistic way, it's not going to go well, because life happens and we're going to miss a gym appointment. We're going to miss our bowling league meetup, and we're going to fall off the wagon pretty fast. But if we're able to approach exercise with a lot of flexibility, it helps us get back on the horse after we slip, and helps us live in this value consistent way. And the last strategy is kind of echoing back to values, is do something that you actually want to do. So if you don't find going to the gym and lifting weights inspiring, don't go to the gym and don't lift weights. Find something else. And find something that challenges you in a good way so that you stay engaged and motivated and don't get bored doing the same routine each day. So the last thing I'll leave you with is a little bit of goal setting. Let's getting into the planning part. This is a tried and true tool. I suspect many of you have heard about it before, setting a SMART goal. So we want our exercise goals to be specific, measurable, realistic, which also means that it's important to us, something that's actionable, we can actually do it and we have a plan, and something that we give ourselves a little bit of a deadline on. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Stacie, I believe. And happy to take questions at the end, or again, contact me, Twitter, email, or reach out through the Postdoc organization. They'll have my contact details.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say that my presentation does tie in very well, because exercise is my top value, because I use it as medicine. That's what I use for my anxiety. So I'm going to share my screen. So adding on to what Madeline was talking about, I'm going to talk more about the relationship between mental and physical health as we age. My name is Stacie Mistysyn, and I have a long history of mental and physical self-abuse. And it didn't help that I grew up on a show where people all over the world were witness to my body changing and not afraid to make comments. For those of you not familiar with Degrassi, this was the show. So I'm the person on the right in each of these incarnations of the show. So I literally grew up in front of the world. And thank goodness it was before the age of social media, because I can't imagine growing up with all the influencers and apps that are out there setting the message that we should be using filters or changing the way we look in order to have people want to follow or like us. And being a teenager is hard enough without all that added pressure, but the pressure doesn't stop once you're an adult. And just because our bodies have stopped growing doesn't mean our bodies have stopped changing or maybe growing in different directions. So I want to talk about some of the main obstacles challenging our mental and physical health as we get older, perceptions about body image and aging, and good old hormones. So when I first turned to fitness, I thought my intention was to be healthy, but it was purely to lose weight at all costs. So ultimately at the expense of my own health. And when I looked for inspiration, it was models in magazines or attractive personalities on TV. When I went to the gym, I assumed the trainers that really knew their stuff were the ones that looked like bodybuilders or were slender. This was ignorant, and I know that now. It was based on unconscious bias from messaging that I grew up with. And today we have apps in abundance. Many are free that can make you look thinner, curvier, more muscular, even taller. And that can be fun and even inspirational for some people, but the real danger I feel behind a lot of these apps is the wording and messaging behind them. And I'm just going to show you one example of one that I found. This was a free one. What app can give me a perfect figure and face editor that let you look like those hot models and celebrities? Can help you gain more likes on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Not surprisingly, I've yet to find an app that can make you look shorter or wider. So what does being healthy even mean these days? It's very important to me that my clients have their priorities in order, because it certainly doesn't mean being thin. Well, a person's BMI, body mass index, which is determined by height and weight, can be a good starting point. It doesn't tell us what's going on inside the body. So a normal BMI doesn't automatically mean a person is healthy, just like an above or below normal BMI doesn't dictate whether a person is at risk for high cholesterol or elevated blood sugar. As well, it's the visceral fat that isn't always obvious to the eye, the fat that lies deep within our abdominal cavity that can start suffocating the organs and making them work harder. So you know that person we all know that seems to be able to eat whatever they want and never exercise at all? They may have regrets later in life, because being healthy, it's not the appearance on the outside, it's about a body that functions and feels well and isn't working harder than it should. So there still seems to be a tendency to zero in on people's weight without knowing if the loss or gain is in that person's best interest. And we need to be careful not to make assumptions one way or the other. Sure, a good fitness trainer can help you lose weight and gain muscle, but we all come in different packaging. So the idea that there's an ideal way to look is outdated and unrealistic. And I'm not going to tell you which of these bodies are healthy because I don't know. But say you're healthy and you're happy where you're at mentally, physically, and then you get to a point where what's been working for you for years stops working. I hear a lot of complaints from clients about new weight gain, muscle loss despite consistently working out, complaints about mood swings and not sleeping. Our hormones fluctuate as we get older. And metabolism starts to slow down. We start losing muscle mass and bone density as a natural part of aging. One hormone affects a multitude of others, right? So hormone imbalances occur. For a person with ovaries, perimenopause can start months or years before menopause begins, and that can wreak havoc on estrogen and progesterone levels. So movement becomes more important than ever to maintain strength, to prevent digestion and memory issues, to keep anxiety and depression at bay. Often, though, the thought process is, oh, I've got to start working out even more, or I'm going to start counting calories. The problem is calories don't control metabolism or discriminate between fat or muscle loss. Hormones do. So knowing when to work out and what type of exercise based on your symptoms and goals is essential to maintain hormonal balance. Rest and recovery time also becomes more important because our muscle fibers take longer to repair themselves as we age. So these are just some signs that let us know when our health is being challenged, not as obvious as being diagnosed with a disease or a heart attack, but nonetheless, warning signs before our bodies stop working properly. And by paying close attention to our bodies without turning into hypochondriacs, but just by listening and being self-aware, we can help mitigate issues before they overwhelm us. The good news is, because there is good news, more often than not, there are lifestyle changes we can make to help alleviate these symptoms. And we can start introducing more whole foods into our diet. We can work on our breathing and relaxation to reduce the allostatic stress load. We can make sure we're drinking enough water by just checking our pee. The paler, the better. Exercise can help with all symptoms. But again, knowing when, what type, and how much to do will save you from potentially feeling worse and help you get the results you want. And we have to be patient with ourselves. I do tell my clients to start with 1 or 2 new habits at a time because habits take time. And it's also very important to make sure you talk to a healthcare professional if you have any chronic issue that you're concerned about, just to rule out something more serious. Now, there are some people, myself included, who can take a seemingly healthy thing like watching what they eat and exercising and turn it into something unhealthy, a potentially fatal obsession. So how do we know when we've gone too far and crossed into unhealthy, controlling behavior? Does anybody remember the 20-minute workout? I might be older than a lot of you here. But when I was in my early 20s, I was shooting schools out the Degrassi finale. And before leaving for set each morning, I would do the 20-minute workout. And then once I got home from shooting, I would do another 20-minute workout. And I would do this every single day. It may not seem like a lot, but when you're not fueling your body properly and you're binging on X-Lax and taking diuretics to dehydrate, that is a recipe for disaster. Not only was my anxiety at an all-time high, my energy was at an all-time low. And I was amenorrheic, so I didn't get my period. So there were plenty of signs. I just didn't take them seriously. So as a fitness trainer, I'm particularly careful not to emphasize calorie counting or endorse restrictive diets, because for some, it can turn into an unhealthy obsession of eating empty calories, calories with no nutritional value, or not enough calories. And we need calories for energy. And if we don't get a balance of protein, complex carbs, and healthy fats from our diet, we start to see hormonal imbalances. Obviously, what we put in our bodies is very important, but it doesn't mean eating in a way that's making you unhappy or that's unsustainable. So what I alluded to, I was exercising compulsively. So the National Eating Disorder Information Center refers that their term is anorexia athletica. It's the technical term. And it's an unhealthy relationship with yourself. Signs can be feeling exhausted all the time, lack of energy, and extreme anxiety when you can't get that workout in. Has anyone heard of orthorexia nervosa? It's a more recent term for an obsession with clean eating. And it's not an officially recognized diagnosis, but it can, again, lead to recognized eating disorders like bulimia, anorexia. There's a little something about it. So again, it's an obsession with only eating healthy foods that can equally lead to anxiety, depression, and take the joy out of eating, especially when we're eating around other people. So there is such thing as too much of a good thing. So eating disorders and other mental health issues were already prevalent before the pandemic, but according to the Public Health Agency of Canada, in a 2021 news release, Canadians reported an increase in stress, anxiety, depression, and loneliness, and distress centers experienced a surge in demand with the impacts of COVID-19 on mental health. So add into this anyone who is seeing and feeling changes in their body that they don't know how to deal with. So if you suspect you or someone you know is struggling, it is worth talking to a healthcare professional about it. And on that note, I'm going to share 2 resources. One is for the distress centers of Greater Toronto. You can call or you can text them. The National Eating Disorder Information Center has a toll-free number. You can chat on the computer, and they can also help you find a healthcare provider that suits your needs. So how do we help ourselves be physically and mentally healthy despite the challenges of hormonal imbalances, age, environmental stress, and stereotypical views about aging and what healthy looks like? Well, first we need to change the conversation from how we look to how we feel. I'm really tired of hearing things like get beach body ready or bikini workout. That inherently suggests we need to look a certain way to go to the beach or wear a bikini. Because in this era of social media perfectionism and influence, we're especially susceptible to feeling like we're not good enough, and we need to be able to talk about it. Instead of trying to control our bodies and minds, because the two work together, we need to nurture them, treat them with respect for the journey they've been on and for what they're capable of. I know growing up, if there had been less stigma about mental illness, less body shaming, and more readily available resources, I know it would have saved me from a lot of suffering. Instead, I punished myself physically with cutting myself and eating disorders. And mentally, I repeatedly told myself how ugly, fat, and useless I was because I didn't understand or respect what my body was going through. And I'm telling you this because I see it happening to people around me, not understanding why their bodies aren't responding the way they used to, or why they're feeling so lethargic or stressed. And it's so easy to be hard on ourselves. I do it, we all do it sometimes without realizing when we say things like, oh, that was so stupid of me, or, oh, I look awful. I have kids now, so I'm particularly aware of the messaging that I'm sending them. I hope that you guys compliment yourselves and encourage yourselves and congratulate yourselves when you get something done. I have an agenda book that I use because, number one, I get overwhelmed easily and I have to write things down. But I also like being able to check off whenever I get something done. That makes me feel good. And so it's just little things like that, as well as daily affirmations. I would tell myself things to remind myself to believe and have confidence when I was going through a career change. And I still do it when I need a morale boost. It's something I advise my clients to do once they've reached or once they've decided on specific goals they want to work towards. Because the more you tell yourself something, the more your brain starts to believe it. So obviously we want to put more positive thoughts into our brain. We want to be more positive so that that's what sticks. So I'm going to leave you with my tips for respecting and nurturing yourself. Drink plenty of water to help regulate blood sugar levels and keep you satiated. Make getting sleep, quality sleep, a priority. I know this is easier said than done. But do try to get on a consistent schedule. That will help, and do something calming right before bed, ideally non-work related. Keep moving. Get up and do something after sitting for a while. Because as Madeline said, we spend so much time on our computers. It's good to just take breaks, get up, walk around. If overly stressed, do something active to get the endorphins pumping. Make time for things you enjoy. It's not selfish to have you time. It is very important to find a balance between stress and your hormones. Keep meals and snacks balanced: protein, complex carbs, healthy fats, and fiber. Take at least 5 minutes during the day to focus on your breathing, say or write down affirmations, meditate. Eat more whole foods than processed foods. Don't compare yourself to others. Even if you feel like you shouldn't be complaining because others have it much worse than you. How you deal with stress is unique and how you cope. So beating yourself up for not being able to cope better is essentially self-abuse. So don't do it. It's okay to ask for help. If you don't help yourself, you're not going to be much help to anyone else either. So let's be good to ourselves. There's no such thing as a perfect body or mind. For me, the best part about getting older is not caring so much about what others think. It's very liberating, and I highly recommend it. I'm going to leave you with my contact info. And just want to say congratulations to all of you for getting to this stage in your professional journey and continuing to listen and learn from others. I appreciate you allowing me to share with you. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy.
Thank you very much, Stacie, and thank you, Madeline. I'm hoping to draft nicely off both of your wisdom. My name is Amy Marino. I'm a holistic counselor and Reiki master. I use my psychotherapy diploma and my training as both an emotional coach and a lifestyle coach to help clients. I also have a side job as an apprentice stonemason, so that's something for my mental health as well, a very physical, not mental thing to do. So I initially started out in the fitness industry as a CSEP personal trainer in the fitness industry in Toronto, actually the private club fitness industry of Toronto. So a very specific demographic of person, access to a lot of surgeries type things where there were a lot of I don't want to say unrealistic because these people did exist, unsustainable, potentially dangerous body images around. That was everybody there, everybody in the gym, people who would come into the gym, get on the scale, go on the treadmill, get back on the scale, go on the elliptical, get back on the scale, go on a recumbent bike. It was a very high concentration of these perfect people, very high concentration of body dysmorphia, unrealistic standards where everybody is so focused on looking at their neighbor and the comparison that way and seeing or judging their sense of self or value based off of where they fell in comparison to these other people. So just incredibly unrealistic, unhealthy beauty standards, male, female, like everybody in between, the children, the pressure on sports and athletics for these young kids too. I too fell victim to being in the fitness industry right out of high school, the whole rat race of, wanting to be chosen and feeling valued and part of a group. So I did a lot of the fad diets, the cleanses, the intense working out until I literally broke my body, complete crash, like what Stacie was alluding to, she was alluding to with the just unhealthy hormones all over the place. And it became very prevalent to me that this pursuit of perfection for all of us was coming at the cost of our self-love, our sense of self, literally selling any personal worth to feel the sense of belonging to other people. So while on the one hand, it is great to be motivated and to have goals, it's not great for it to come at the cost or the expense of being constantly and consistently under the pressure of being unimpressed with yourself, of, you do all these things and you are literally killing yourself to try and attain these goals or become this person. And at the end of the day, you hate yourself and it's not getting you where you're trying to go. So then this, for me, led to the questions of like, why am I doing this? So similar to Madeleine talking about values, I don't mean why am I doing this like you're 30 minutes into a 3-hour run, you're like, why am I doing this? But literally, why do you care about this? Why is it important to you? Is it for health? Is it because you want to look a particular way? Is it because you want to get well into old age with independence, living in your own home with your potential partner at that time, or whatever the values are? Why is it important to you to be doing these things that you're doing in regards to fitness? So is it to look a particular way? Is it to have a certain level of health? On the kind of illness, healthy wellness spectrum, if you're taking care of yourself, you can afford to get sick because it doesn't knock you out, where someone who's not quite taking care of themselves, getting an illness brings them to zero. So having a higher capacity, a general capacity, you can afford essentially to be unwell for a while because your body will recoup, where if you're running on fumes, there's nothing bringing you back to health. And also an important question to ask or to be aware of is, what would it mean to you if you were to achieve these goals? So if you have this dream version of yourself, what does it mean? What does it represent to be there? Again, why do you care? What is your why? Without a why, there's nothing giving you direction or tethering you to where you're trying to go. And it can be very easy to drift or get lost if you don't have a why, essentially, as your kind of lighthouse guiding you and directing you where you want to go, and being honest about if you have unhealthy reasons for your goals. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to look great, but when it drifts into that zone that Stacie was talking about, of it's affecting your personal relationships and costing you health and well-being, maybe you want to take a second and reflect and adjust your goals. And then once you have your whys, it's important to be realistic about the when. So as Madeleine was talking about the SMART goals, take an accurate assessment of where you are currently. So the desired you of the future is not the one who's putting in the work today to get you there. So, super fit Amy, who's really strong and can deadlift 300 pounds, is not Amy who's walking into the gym today. So if that version of Amy is giving me grief over not being strong enough already, not being thin enough already, they don't make sense. They're not the same person. Amy getting me to the future is not Amy who's doing the work today. And cutting yourself some slack. You do have to put in some work. So I'm in Quinte West. If I wanted to visit Stacie, it's going to take me an hour to drive there. So I'm going to get there, but there is a physical distance. We can live in time and space. There is a physical distance between me being here and me getting there. So having an unrealistic expectation, thinking I'm going to be there in 5 minutes, I'm going to get disappointed because I cannot get to Whitby in 5 minutes. It's not going to happen. That's true for our fitness goals or wellness goals as well. There is just time it's going to take to get there, but staying consistent over that time will help get you there faster. So then also getting into the all or nothing mentality can be kind of dangerous with the perfectionist ideals too. So if you have this all or nothing mentality, you may never get to meet that future version of yourself, where instead of doing small things consistently over a period of time, which will slowly and gradually move you closer to those goals, if you're that sort of weekend warrior type where you're making maybe not some great decisions during the week, and then on a Saturday night you go to play hockey or soccer or something with friends, you're probably going to get hurt and be broken for the next few days laying around, but then do it again the next weekend. You're not going to move towards goals of a consistent long-term plan. You're going to be injured and eventually just stop doing anything completely. And then starting simple, which was echoing some of the things that were shared too. So if your goal is to drink 2 liters of water a day, maybe to go from, if you're drinking 1 glass now, to jump to 2 liters is a bit much. So can you add half a glass a day, get yourself their consistency, consistently or with consistency. So if it seems, oh, you know, that's not very much, if I add half a glass a day, it's not very much, but over a period of time, it is quite a bit. If a plane goes off course by 1/100th of a degree, over time, that plane is very much going in a different direction. And that's true for yourself too. If it's so easy, then it should be no problem to just do it. Instead of going 0 to 100, do the 1%, then the 2%, then the 3%, and you will eventually get to that 100%. A specific example is somebody like my mom, who has goals of being more athletically able. And I told her to just do 5 squats a day for a month. And she laughed and said, oh, that was too easy. It wouldn't make a difference. But at the end of the month, that's 150 squats more than she's going to do over the next month anyway. And these things do add up. Consistency over time is key. It doesn't have to be a crazy amount, just something over nothing, and build as you go. Because if it's I have to eat perfectly and do this, you might do it for one day and then you stop the day you mess it up. Okay, then I'll start Monday. I'm going to start the first of the month. I'll start this day. I'll start this way. And it's constantly pushed in the future. And you're never actually getting anywhere. That time is going to pass anyway. Do the 5 squats, do the extra glass of water, eat an apple, or whatever the goals happen to be that line up for you. And if something, just repeating again, if something small seems too easy or not enough, then try it for 2 weeks consistently. I'm going to project that something small and easy, we wouldn't be able to do it for 2 weeks consistently, because it is difficult to add new behaviors and do simple things. So something as simple as I'm going to wake up and have a glass of water first thing every day for 2 weeks, probably going to miss a day. A lot of us are probably going to miss at least one day, because it is difficult to add new behaviors. We have, again, just kind of reiterating that moderation or starting things slowly. We had a term when I was in the fitness industry, that January to February timeframe of the influx of people to the gym. We called it tourist season, because we knew we would only be seeing these people for a short period of time, and then returning to the regular crowd of people who were kind of sticking around. So just echoing a lot of what was already said, of having a plan and being aware of roadblocks, and that it is going to be difficult. And some days your motivation is going to have to be manufactured. It's not going to come inherently. Thinking about the future you, having conversations with future you and where you're trying to get, and being compassionate with you today. They are different people, where the you that has realized and actualized your goals is not the same as you today. And remembering that and cutting yourself slack, that you are working hard. And then as far as resources, not needing much to start. So if it's intimidating to get into a gym, or it feels costly, or just not knowing where to go, start with going for a simple walk, or you don't need a gym membership to go for a walk. Or if you have public transit, can you walk to a different bus stop and then get on? Or just simple things where you can add in small little areas. I think there was a person who ran a half marathon or a marathon on their 10-foot balcony or something. It would have been incredibly monotonous and boring, but they had a goal and they ran that 21K distance or whatever on a 10-foot space. Start with body weight exercises. If you don't have equipment, or just working with things around your house. If a trainer is not in the budget, having just a friend for accountability, somebody to check in with, to know, I know for myself, I coach fitness classes here, and just knowing that somebody is expecting you is often enough to get a person to show up. Having that accountability. You can use things around the house too. There's anything of weight. If you have a table or a chair that you feel could support you, step up onto it or squat down onto it, or incorporating intentional movements into your chores. So something I'll often do with laundry is do squats and things when I'm picking them up. Or I have children, so if you have kids too, mine like to jump on me and be on me all the time. So just trying different movements like that. And then just remembering that where you are today is not the villain. Cut yourself some slack. The version of you again, who's doing the heavy lifting is the you today to get you where you're trying to go. It's kind of like a team project. Everybody has a role. You can't just lean on the one person who, you know, has the biggest personality or is the loudest or you think is kind of the leader. Everybody has a role to play. Cut yourself slack. Take the time and stay committed. Yeah. That's it for whoever's next.
Thanks a lot, Amy. That was the end of our scheduled speaker time. So if we have questions in the chat, we can try and get to a couple. We are pretty much nearing the 1 p.m. mark. There are a couple of questions in the Slido already, and I think a number of them were answered well within the talks, which is nice. There's one particular one I want to bring up at the end that is says exploitative labor as a postdoc is a mental health nightmare, but the onus is put on the individual instead of institute to manage health. How do we reconcile this? I think that's a big question, not necessarily for our panel speakers. All the, you know, you can control what you can control, so you can try to work on all those other aspects of managing your mental health and physical health, but it's sort of an institutional limitation here that I believe would be well served to try to bring up when in our UHN postdoc association, try and find some allies and people who you can speak to about that specific issue and hopefully relate and find support on that. But otherwise, looking through what's already in the Slido, I think there was a lot of coverage for these questions. You know, Madeleine was really specific about the physiological effects of exercise on depression and dosing. So that's one example of one of the questions, and how to get started. Physical fitness and health, I think you guys covered a whole lot of that. So there's still, at the moment, nothing in the chat that I can see that is new. So I wanted to ask if Lauren might have a slide at hand that we could leave up at the end for some resources for mental health at UHN. Please, thank you. So this is what we do have for postdocs. And it looks like we are at 2 p.m. I am really grateful for all of our speakers. I really enjoyed this. It was a great event. And if anyone else had anything more to add, now is the time. But and there's one last message in there as well from Amanda, as far as following up on exploitative situations, and to advocate for you for that. But yes, thank you so much to all of our speakers for, yeah, I see that point in the chat. Wish it was longer. I think I do too. And lots of thank you to the speakers. Okay, and I believe because this was recorded, we'll be able to have a link after the fact to revisit if you missed anything or wanted to review. All right, well, thank you very much again, and we'll sign off now, and I'm really pleased with that. Thanks, everyone.